Hey, it's Freddie Cruz, and I'm digging this one out of the archives. Going back to early 2023 and a trip I made to the Houston Toy Museum in the Heights, where I spoke with co-founder Matt Broussard. Matt owns over 10,000 toys, some of which are housed in the museum. During this conversation, we talk about his collection and how it got so big, as well as the cultural impact toys have on society. If you're in the Houston area, you've got to check out the Houston Toy Museum. It looks small from the outside, but once you get in, you'll be blown away once you get past the velvet rope. Learn more at HoustonToyMuseum.com.
Hi, I'm Ed Sheeran.
This is Bruno Mars.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
This is your man Flo Rida with Freddie Cruz.
This is AJ Mitchell with Freddie Cruz.
Freddie Cruz.
Freddie Cruz.
Your little Chico Pit, Mr. 305, and you already know what it is.
My name is Freddie, and it's time to cruise through HTX. What a place.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to crash your party, and it's quite the party because it doesn't look very big from the outside, but you come in and boom.
Yeah, there's definitely an awe moment whenever you see how big the museum actually is, because it's about 4,500 square feet, but our little gift shop is only like, maybe 1,000.
Yeah, if that, because it looks tiny. Then you have all the merch, and so it looks even smaller. But you walk through that door to come in, and you are just greeted by thousands of toys and memories and all the nostalgia.
Yeah, I usually tell people if they like our gift shop, you'll love the museum, because a lot of times people will walk around and be like, they're already in that mode of, oh, I had that. Oh, that. Yeah, I remember that. Or things like that. So usually I'm like, well, if you like the gift shop, you'll love the museum.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take a walk back, because the museum wasn't always the museum, but you obviously have always had a love of toys. So what led you to this point? Were you working in corporate America? What were you doing?
I was just a handyman. I just did odds and ends and things like that. But it all started like I just like most people, I put my toys away in high school, you see everybody else do that. And so you just like, oh, okay, this is the time that we don't play with toys anymore. Okay, yeah, like now we do sports and extracurricular activities. And so it wasn't until me and my wife started dating and I'd seen a toy that I used to have. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. Well, then I started buying the toys that I used to have. And then it quickly turned into buying the toys that I was never able to get and always wanted. And so, the collection just grew over and over time, and I enjoyed showing it to friends and family, and I just, you get addicted to the happiness that people have, and, everyone's reminded of a happy memory, and I never had sad memories showing off my collection, and so I was like, man, I wish I could just do this every day. And my wife suggested, why don't you do a museum? We go to a lot of museums. And that was like 10 years ago. And then it was always just this fictitious dream that we would just pretend. And then it didn't really snowball until the last like 2 years. It become more and more of a reality. And it's been a blast. It's been a wild ride. And I mean, we've only been open 4 months, and I just can't wait to keep adding more and more stuff.
Yeah, can we go back to 2019? So this was the idea, it sort of germinated.
Yeah.
Sarah, your wife, is like, you should have a museum.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's a great idea. But obviously it's 3 years in the making. So what was the first step so if step one was the idea and then you thinking, yes, it is a good idea, what was the next step?
I would just go around to antique stores and estate sales and garage sales and Goodwills and, all the places to get fine toys. I was pretty frugal, so I just bide my time. So I had the toys. It wasn't until it was always like, well, where would we even put it? Like, what part of town? And we moved into the Heights, probably when we were in our 20s, and just really, really fell in love with the city, our own city that, most people, they don't learn how to love their city until they're in their late 20s, early 30s. And so I want, we discovered how great it was. And now my goal is I want people to discover how great their city is earlier.
Yeah.
And that way you can experience every little facet of your city. And And so the Heights was always where we kind of wanted it to be. And this is actually their old Retropolis. It was like a shop that had vintage clothing and a lot of vendors and things.
Gotcha.
And so I was just looking up online, like at just different properties in the Heights. And all of a sudden I saw the Retropolis building. And I was like, Sarah, the Retropolis building is for lease. And that's when it really started, just the snowball started to pick up.
Yeah.
Because we were like, okay, I think the next day or the day after that, you know, we called our realtor friend and said, hey, can you show us this property? And of course, when we got here, it had been empty for 2 years. So
okay, because I wanted to ask about that. Yeah, because I imagined
it was bare bones, just the walls, nothing.
Mm-hmm. But it's crazy how it was abandoned for 2 years, because conventional wisdom would suggest that the Heights, and so for my listeners who are not in the Houston area, the Heights is a very upscale but old world kind of community within the greater Houston area. So conventional wisdom would suggest that a sizable space like this would not be vacant for 2 years.
You know, I actually think that the size is what made it vacant.
Okay.
Because it's so big.
Okay.
So many people came and looked at the property and things, but there really wasn't a kind of company that could be as spread out or just could cover this much, couldn't, not even a restaurant, or like people would come by like restaurants and different ideas, but it would always come down to, it was too big.
Mm-hmm.
And,
put that way, it makes sense.
I had a booth here when it was Retropolis, and I just fell in love with the building. It was built in the 1940s, and when you look up old pictures of the street, it's cool to see, the pictures and things. But it has this grand stairway that, makes you think of like, the traditional stairways on like, that you saw on the Titanic, or something like that. And so it's very, it just seemed like, okay, this definitely, like, put a little paint, it looks like a museum.
Yeah, and you walk through this entryway. So when you come into the Houston Toy Museum, y'all, you go in through the gift shop, and then you walk through the doorway, and you are greeted by a Titanic-style set of stairs that go left and right, and then boom, you're hit with all the toys.
Yeah. So like downstairs we have like most popular toys by decade, like just like a timeline to help people get a good view of especially like the grandparents that come in and they see, okay, these are my toys, the 1950s.
Yeah.
And being able to see the progression. But then upstairs we have bigger, broader categories and exhibits that focus on one thing and tell the history about that one toy line.
What is your favorite era of toys that you did not grow up with? And I'm guessing you're millennial aged.
I'm 35,
35.
So I grew up with like the 90s toys. I mean, Ninja Turtles came out in 88, but I was obsessed with Ninja Turtles. So if I could go back, I'd always wanted to go back to the 70s just so I could go to concerts and things. But if it was like toy related, it would have to be the 80s.
We had some great toys, man.
That's whenever like a lot of good toys were starting to be made, and you had toy companies discovering, okay, I can make a toy, then come up with the backstory. I can turn it into a comic, I could turn it into a TV show, and then that's where you had like the cartoons that just exploded. Because now that they realize that they can make a 30-minute ad for a toy line, that's all our cartoons really was just ads.
Yep.
And then you had breaks with more ads. But they put out a lot of great TV shows. They put a lot of great things out into the pop culture world that have such a huge following, and such as like He-Man. Like that was a little bit earlier before me, or like Thundercats, and you had just this explosion of. Just these ideas of these characters that were just so wild that it was just a new new imagination world that they opened up to you.
It was, and I'm an '80s kid, so I've got more than 10 years on you, but I've never heard it put that way, that cartoons were just 30-minute ads for toys, because I had He-Man in the Masters of the Universe and the Gray Skull. What was it? Castle Grayskull.
Yeah.
Dude, I had all those. I had Lion-O and Panthro and Tigra from Thundercats. And
those are very hard to find now.
No way, really?
Thundercats are, that's one of the ones that, like, there's a few out there, but even the ones that are out there, no one wants to sell.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's none ever on the market. And the second they are, they're snatched up. Like, yeah. So we don't have any here for the museum yet, but that'll be one of our, almost like the whole line is a holy grail.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's what's so cool about that era of toys. I've gotten over the past few years into the craft of storytelling. And so you learn of Joseph Campbell's hero's arc. And so a lot of the good guys were the classic good guys, the invincible ones. You got He-Man, Lion-O, and you can't really do anything to these cats. They weren't
allowed to lose.
They were not allowed to lose. Like Hulk Hogan, who's a human example of that. Yeah. The invincible type. And so it really, I don't know, it does something to, I guess it kind of does something to your psyche. You don't really think about that. We had a little bit of this conversation before we hit record. With, with the cartoons, things that you don't realize when you're a kid, but then you realize years later down the road.
Yeah, that they have adult tropes inside them that you didn't ever even notice as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, let's talk about, because we're talking about 80s toys. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the new exhibit, G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe exhibit.
So we've had a lot of people ask us about, like, oh, you don't have a lot of Joes. And the truth is, like, it was such a huge category. It was intimidating to me. There was, especially Joes, because there's thousands of characters, thousands of accessories to each different one.
Yeah.
Which that was the good thing about Joes. You could find a specific character that you could relate with. And, but to collect them, it was always a little, it was a mountain to me, because I was like, that's just too much information, and I'd already collected, a lot more other stuff, but, Transformers was another one where it was just like the vastness of the collection would be, like you could just have a Transformers museum almost, or a Joe museum, just because there's such huge categories. And so my ideas was always like, I'm going to try to find someone who collected that stuff, that they put all their time and energy in Joe's. Mm-hmm. They have the knowledge of all the characters. They just have so much love for it, because I know if I put together the Joes, like, I would get a character wrong, and I wouldn't do it justice. No matter how much research, I don't think I could get as much research as someone who's a Joe guy.
And in the internet age, somebody would go on and say, well, you know something, Matt, this thing about Destro that you typed up is totally wrong.
Yeah. So definitely whenever we're doing exhibits, I want to be as informed as possible, and I want the information to showcase as much history as possible, because you can tell a lot what's going in society based on what kind of toys are being made, mm-hmm. or even the materials that toys are being made, and the demand of toys. And they don't make toys in wartime; they only make toys in peacetime, and so it's really easy to,
I didn't look at it that way.
Look at a graph and say, okay. Especially after World War II, you had this huge boom in toys, because all these war factories, they were empty. Now What do? They all turned to toy factories. Then you started to get an explosion in tin toys, and you had all this material that, we all had to send off for different reasons. But now you have just an explosion of everything. And so that's when you see a lot more toys just pop up in the 50s. Like Barbie, Mr. Potato Head, and even Joe's. You had these things that just, now it was good to have. Like, it was, people were capable of having toys and spending the extra money. and especially like, you look at the Great Depression and those kind of eras, no one could afford toys. You could,
They were wondering where their next meal was going to come
yeah, they
from.
didn't have time to think about what the toys that they could have been playing with. And because the thing about a toy is like, it's your tool, a child's tool to discover the parameters around them. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have done a lot of research in toys, and we can take from what they've learned and really help children grow up faster, but also be have the skills. We actually have a science behind toys. It's not just fun colors but toys are a tool for children to learn.
It's interesting you say that, because when you think of Mr. Potato Head, it's a puzzle. It's interactive. Yeah. It's not like a flat board with little pieces.
Yeah.
Where did the eyes go? And the see and say. It's like, what does the cow sound like?
Yeah. So Mr. Potato Head, so it actually first started with the potato. And
potato.
Yeah, they would just sell you the pieces, like the arm, like it had like a body and then like arms and legs. But the information inside the booklet when you buy it says like, all right, kids, go to your parents' pantry and get a fruit or vegetable, and then it would tell you to put all the pieces in the vegetable. And so after the first year or so, they actually started getting a lot of complaints that parents were finding all this, like, kids don't pick up their toys at all. So they were finding rotten fruits and vegetables all over the house. So they were getting lots of complaints. So they were like, okay, we got to do something different here. So then they started putting out a little plastic potato. Yeah. And then they came out with like, Mrs. Carrot and all the other other fruits and vegetables. But it's a good thing that they changed, because, Mr. Potato Head was actually the first first toy commercial ever to come out.
I'm learning all these things. You're blowing my mind, dude.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I had no idea.
You get me talking. I just I'll just go through.
No, this is great. You are blowing my mind. I was today years old when I found out about Mr. Potato Head being actual potato. But it doesn't surprise me that kids, the more things change, the more they stay the same, though, right? I mean, kids never pick up their toys.
Yeah, and so there's not many food-based toys that are really on the market anymore. But Mr. Potato Head always has a place for everyone. Everyone had a Mr. Potato Head, and I don't think there's any slowing that down. It's going to be one of those toys like the Slinky that just keeps going. There's no stopping it.
It's a zombie toy.
Yeah.
It's never going to go away. But it's classic. Sometimes the what's old is new again, and it'll never go away because it's just so simple. It's classic. It's a fun, interactive kind of thing that you get to play with. But I want to go back to something you mentioned about because it started with an actual potato. But kids were, because their imaginations are limitless, so they're using other foods. So you talked about carrots. Was there an actual carrot plastic toy?
Yeah, Mrs. Carrot and Mr. Pepper, Mr. Orange.
So as a kid,
but they're all plastic. They actually came out with the plastic.
As
models.
A kid, I don't remember those though. So they just went away.
They kind of. That was more of their first 10 years or so. And then, especially in the 80s, they switched over to a more generic, just potato. And but then they got rid of the arms and stuff, which I think was a bad decision.
I don't remember that.
And then I know it for good reason, because then they definitely switched back to the arms and more so in the towards the late 80s, they definitely switched back to a more iconic that we recognize now.
It makes sense from an operational standpoint to consolidate to one single food item, because you don't have to worry about packaging or marketing or,
Yeah. And especially, here at the museum, we really want to focus on a lot of this box art. And Mr. Potato Head had great box art. And we don't notice how much that box art changed what we wanted to buy. Yeah. Most of the time it would show you a world that you could pretend inside and give you permission. You know, like, hey, this is a world that you can create in, or create your own. You know, so I really give it up to a lot of the artists that did the box art, that they were the ones to show you what kind of universes you could create, and not only play in the universe they made, but create your own.
And that is the importance of having a great toy that cannot be understated, because there's all the talk of, oh, well, you go to school and the imagination is kind of trained out of you as a kid. But when you come home, you have a toy and you can quite literally do whatever you want with it. You can put Mr. Potato's eyes where the nose
on
goes.
his arms. You just switch
Yeah.
it all up. And just like the joke in Toy Story when he says he's Picasso, you know, like, we've been watching that movie a lot ever since we did the museum. Started the museum just because, you know, so many iconic toys were, you know, it's almost like a sign of you made it, that you were in a toy store. Your toy was in the Toy Story movie, you know, and you know, like Slinky Dog, and you know, all of them are I think speaking spells in it, and so it's it'll be interesting to see what's in the new ones.
The new exhibit is the G.I. Joe exhibit.
Yeah.
If you had to, let's say Sarah, your wife, AKA marketing director as well.
Yeah.
If Sarah says, okay, honey, we have to narrow it down for 1 month. We're just going to do one exhibit and we're going to make over the entire toy museum. And it's just this one toy universe. What is it?
Oh, that would be hard. I'd probably, for a history standpoint, I would probably want to do Barbie. I feel like you learn the most about society and the flow of history through the process of the release of different dolls. You know, even with Ken, and I think that would be probably my go-to. It has the biggest vastness to cover you know, there's enough lessons in there for us all to learn. So probably that. I mean, G.I. Joe would probably be right behind it, if not tied for it. But yeah, it'd have to be those two. I would say Transformers, but G.I. Joe, I think G.I. Joe or Barbie would have to be it.
Yeah, you know, Barbie is an interesting toy because it was a single prototype of a human who looked a certain way, and now it is this vast universe of different characters, different orientations, different looks, different styles, and you've got the bougie priced Barbies, you got the movie themes, you got the classic movies, you got...
There's a Barbie now for every occasion.
Yeah, every single occasion. You want a Barbie that looks like you can literally have a Barbie or a Ken that looks just like you.
And so it is interesting to view back history and know that there was, you know, we do focus out here at the museum that there's proper representation in toys. You know, toys kind of tell you tell you how far you can go. Certain toys were only produced that said, okay, boys can do everything. Mm-hmm. There is no sky's the limit. But when you look at the version of toys, they made every kind of toy for a boy. But then if you look at a girl, they only ever made dolls. And well, a lot of the dolls that came from them not having as many children, and so there wasn't an opportunity for the younger kids to help raise the babies. And so because they were having less kids, they ended up starting to buy fake babies for little girls to practice.
Oh.
And so that's kind of like where the whole dolls really, really was made for, was to help usher in the next wave of mothers. And
makes sense.
And whenever you're told that, you know, this is the only three jobs in your life you could be. Mm-hmm. You have this glass box over you. And then if you take into account all the people that didn't even have toys made for them, they didn't even have a box. There was no, not even a guide for them to say, oh, I can even, you know, just be a mother. Or, you know, so like, especially like with black dolls, they would just take a white doll and they'd just paint it black. So it didn't have any features. It didn't have any, it was just like an afterthought.
Yeah.
You know, it makes you feel that there's definitely a glass box around you.
But boys, you can do anything.
Anything. Sky
Anything
is
you
the
want.
limit.
Sky's the
Yeah.
limit. But girls, hold on now.
Yeah. So,
Oh, man.
so that's why I love toys. You can just see so many things
Yeah.
about history through them because toys haven't been around for, I mean, they've been around since the beginning of time, but the amount of toys and the amount of different toys you can find is just, there's more opportunities to showcase everybody.
Yeah. I mean,
Which there's still room to grow, but I think the toy community is definitely getting there.
yeah, just in a short sliver of human history, because you're talking about toys being around since the beginning of time. I remember, what was the movie Gladiator, where the guy's carving out a little thing of the Trojan horse for
Yeah.
his boy back home, and that was
Yeah.
that was a toy. I mean, I can't imagine being a little kid in ancient Rome, and that was my, like, if you took 10-year-old Freddie from the 80s,
Yeah,
and you
dropped him there.
dropped him there, I'd have been like, what is this crap?
Yeah, so like I definitely want to go back even further because right now we really stop in like, well, at least with our timeline, we stop in the 50s or we start in the 50s, but we have toys throughout, at least my oldest toy is Parker Brothers from 1890s. I have a bunch of Parker Brother games, which most people don't even realize how old certain companies are, such as that, or like I have a teddy bear from like the 1910s. And so we definitely have toys from before the 50s, just our timeline. That was the best timeline that I could think of that would showcase most of the people that are alive today.
And it seems like that was the beginning of the cataclysmic growth in toys, or at least a revolution in the way toys were made and the way they were seen, instead of just kind of being an afterthought or being something that would train girls to be moms or something to keep the boys occupied or whatnot. There's actual deliberate effort to...
Like I'm really interested in like the psychology of what toys you played with as a kid compared to what kind of a career you chose. Like, did it affect your career you chose? And did it do it not even thinking about it? Because like, yeah, you tell your parents what kind of toys you kind of want, but a lot of parents, they take a lot of liberties and they give you the toys that, they could see you playing, or they could see like you playing with, or like, how many people that became doctors just was always playing doctor.
They had Operation, and that was all they played because that was the only game they had.
How many Hot Wheels guys ended up are car guys? Yeah. Or like, how many G.I. Joe people are going to the military? Or what toy do you resonate with that affected your career, that in turn affected your life? I'm really fascinated with that part of toys, and so when people come in, I always ask them, what's your favorite toy? Well, what's your career? And like, especially musicians. I haven't talked to too many musicians about what toys, but that would be interesting to talk to.
Absolutely, man. Well, this has been so much fun getting to know you and seeing the museum. I'm going to take an in-depth tour now, y'all, that the interview is about to wrap. If you're in the Houston area, please visit the Houston Toy Museum. Website is really easy to remember, y'all. HoustonToyMuseum.com. Find them on Instagram and on TikTok, on the socials. Matt and Sarah have got quite the operation going on. Thousands of toys. Thank goodness they're not cluttered up in his house. They're here in the Heights, in the Houston area. Matt, my man, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, man. If I can just leave you with one thing, just it's art. Toys are art. 10 artists made a toy. You had a designer, a sculptor, a painter, a box art designer. You had so many artists that made these toys, and toys are art that you didn't know was art. And that's one thing I want the biggest takeaway to be.
Hey, it's me. I'm back with a quick little nudge. If you enjoyed this podcast as much as I did putting it together for you, then please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to the newsletter at cruisethroughhtx.com and share with your family and friends. Thank you.